Trailer orders continue to fall and concerns from carriers grow. The National Safety Council reports a 49% increase in deaths related to truck accidents over the past decade, but it could be harder than ever to hold companies liable. What gives? And experts predict the uptick in trucking bankruptcies to continue into the foreseeable future. All that, plus we'll check in with our friend Jason Miller for his update on what's happening with the economy and how it relates to the trucking industry. For Randall Reilly, I'm Joshua Miller, and this is the 30-Day Reset. "2024 is upon us. It's a new year and we're back with an all-new 30-Day Reset. We're back every month with the latest driver recruiting data, news stories, and an economic update. If you haven't already, give us a like, share the video, and subscribe so you don't miss any of our new video content. And don't forget, you can get your copy of everything we go over today down below. We'll be covering a lot of data and I'll be moving through pretty quickly, just trying to give the overall picture. So if you really want to dig in, get your copy of the 30-Day Reset download and check it out in detail for yourself. But that's enough talk. Let's get into it. First up, Trucking by the Numbers, brought to you by Strategize. December search activity was down 15% through the first half of the month. Now, this isn't a huge shock, as many drivers are typically content to finish out the year with their current employer before making a move in the new year, if they're looking to jump fleets. In response to this lower driver interest at the end of the year, companies scaled back posts. 24% fewer companies posted truck driver jobs in the month of November compared to the previous year, and the total job postings number is down 32% year over year. The first half of December saw a 3% dip month-over-month cost per lead, but the final number for the month could be a bit higher as many companies try to front-load budgets to plan around the decreased activity during Christmas. The search volumes through the first half of December were at their lowest levels since last December, and we expect those low numbers to hold true once the final tallies for the end of December are fully calculated. We typically expect the search volume to drop in November and December before ticking back up in January. It appears that, at least so far, the yearly trend will hold true for this year as well. Overall load volume was down 40% year over year and 44% compared to the 5-year average. On the spot rate side of things, despite being at the highest level since the beginning of July, overall rates were still down 12% year over year and 7% when compared to the 5-year average. Now, when it comes to the individual segments, dry van loads were down 44% year over year, while rates were 12% lower than the same week of last year. Refrigerated loads decreased by 41% year over year, and the rates for refrigerated shot up by 40 cents on the final week of December. There has only been one time in the past decade we've seen a larger single week increase. That would be the final week of 2017, which saw a 42.6 cent increase. That being said, refrigerator rates still down 13% year over year. And flatbed continues the trend with load volumes down 37% and spot rates falling 14% year over year. For a more in-depth breakdown of all the data we just covered and a lot more that I didn't get to, including all the 5-year averages and things like that, well, that's all available in this month's download. Now, on to the headlines. According to FTR, net U.S. trailer orders fell by more than 13,000 in November, a month-over-month decrease of 38%. Peak order season opened in September, and unlike the last few years when challenges were squarely on the supply side, that pendulum, well, now it's swung, and the trailer industry concerns now largely rest on the demand side of the equation. According to the ACT Research Director of Commercial Vehicle Market Research and Publications, Jennifer McNeely, despite being in the third month of the new peak order season, build outpaced orders in November by about 2,500 units. She went on to say, trailer backlogs contracted 32% against 2022's supply chain constrained and pent-up demand-heavy environment. The National Safety Council reported a 49% rise in truck accident-related fatalities over the past decade. However, moving forward, state laws and federal preemption could make it harder to hold trucking companies liable for such accidents. So, what's federal preemption? The basic concept here is a growing number of states have sought to align their state-level regs to the federal standard. Those in favor of preemption argue that state-specific regulations should not interfere with or impose any additional requirements beyond those federal regulations. They say that this can help provide consistency in interstate commerce, But detractors complain this practice shields companies from state level liability claims. In addition to preemption, there have also been movements in state laws regarding tort reform and damage caps, with states like Texas, Georgia, Indiana, Wisconsin, Florida, and Missouri all enacting some form of change. A common feature of tort reform is a cap on damages in personal injury lawsuits. As an example, Iowa recently passed a law limiting jury awards to $5 million in cases against commercial vehicles. There's also the issues of changing standards in the burden of proof and expert witness testimony. More changes are sure to continue moving forward, but for the moment, it would appear that fleets have gained at least some liability protection in many states when it comes to accidents involving their trucks. And finally, it looks like the string of trucking bankruptcies will continue. Tim Swanson, a bankruptcy attorney at Moy White of Denver, says, I think we're going to see the trend continue for 12 to 18 months. Many companies have been forced into bankruptcy due to the longer than expected pandemic recovery, coupled with the shift in consumer purchasing patterns. Since lockdowns ended, consumers have shifted towards more services related spending. Increased wages, rising fuel costs, and record setting inflation also come into play and make surviving difficult. And though the industry has seen down cycles before, this is a little unique. Coming off a once in a century pandemic, the pressure on carriers' margins is now coming from multiple sources simultaneously. Many believe we're a ways off from a full economic recovery, putting the timeline late into this year or perhaps even into 2025. And for more on that economy and what we're seeing and what we can expect as we head into the new year, here's our friend Jason Miller with his economic update.
Hey everyone, so we move into 2024. I know we're all looking for some good news on the freight market side. Unfortunately, right now, as we're talking in early January, there just isn't much to be very cheery about right now. It's kind of like a Michigan winter. Sort of starting off, if we look at where dry van spot pricing's at, and this is data from DAT Freight and Analytics. On the left, I've got the dry van spot rates in red with fuel surcharge, and then the broker by contract rates in black. What I want to emphasize is both series are effectively flat right now. They've pretty much been flat since about the mid part of the year. Let's not worry about fuel surcharges in there. Just basically say rates are flat. If anything, the good news is they're unlikely to fall further. But if we think what would bring us out of the current weak pricing environment, it really has to be those dry van spot rates really sort of jumping up and getting us close to those broker by contract rates. Because historically, when the difference between those is about 10%, that tends to be when we start enter sort of a bull market pricing cycle, as shown on the right chart, where we can see, anytime dry van spot prices are very close to those broker by contract prices, we tend to have very strong market conditions. We're still way away from the sort of magical 10% threshold that signals the market change. And given we're in the first quarter, that's the weakest time of the year for freight, especially January and February. There's just not that much to get excited over yet. When we look at the overall demand story, what I've shown here is the seasonally adjusted trucking ton mile index that Yembo Yamole of the University of Tennessee and I co-author. And what I want to emphasize right now is that through October 2023, the most recent data we have, we continue to appear to be essentially in a trough, down about 3% from the peak level that we saw in first and second quarter of 2022. So we've seen about a 3% decline in ton mileage. That may not seem like much, but on historical terms, that's a very substantial freight recession, especially when you factor in all the additional capacity that came online in 2022 and the first half of 2023. Right now, there just doesn't seem to be much out there that's going to shock us out of that. I think what we're all waiting for is to take a look at what single-family housing starts do throughout the year, especially if the Federal Reserve lowers interest rates. But my personal belief is that's going to be many months from now, so we shouldn't be counting on that anytime soon. And consistent with that, if we take a look at industrial production through November in the manufacturing sector, and manufacturing still generates about 58% of demand for truck transportation. Even with the end of the UAW strike, we really didn't see much of a bump. And as you can see from that most recent data, manufacturing output right now is effectively where it was at the end of 2019 after we'd had a fairly steep dive. We're down about 2 or 3% from our highs in 2022, And believe it or not, we're down about 5 to 6% from our highs in 2018. So manufacturing output right now is substantially below where we've been at for our most recent peaks. There's a lot of talk of reshoring and nearshoring and the implications for that, but I'll tell you what, right now the data is not showing anything substantial. So again, a topic I wouldn't get too excited over. So with that, that wraps up this month's update. I wish I had better news. Hopefully when in February, things will be looking up a little bit, but I will tell you, I'm not really expecting that to actually occur.
Thanks so much for that, Jason. All of the charts and information Jason covered there are featured in our 30-day reset download for this month, which is again available below. You'll also find consultation and Strategize links down there as well. If you'd like to talk to our team about how we can help you meet your 2024 goals, or if you'd like to dig into the data for yourself with Strategize, just click on one of those. Thanks again for joining us. Don't forget, we'll be back next month with another edition of the 30-day reset. Until then, Happy New Year, everybody. Well, hello. Thanks for watching our video and sticking around to the bitter end. If you liked it and you haven't already, come on, man, hit the subscribe button. If you want to check out more of our video content, well, you can do so by just clicking on one of these guys right there. Okay, bye.